As we begin the unit on percentages, it's important to consider how percentages are used in everyday life. Percentages are certainly used commonly in everyday life. And now, before we study percentages in more detail, we want you to investigate how percentages are used in your worlds. So please spend some time talking now with your family members and list various ways that percentages are used in your lives. Please provide meaningful and numerical examples wherever possible, noting that we will discuss these in class. Thank you. Please stop the video now and continue when you are ready. I hope you came up with some good examples. Here are some that we came up with. In a political context, percentages are very often used. In a recent article from The Age, as recently as a month ago, in the middle of June, based on a random sample of voters, there was a 14% difference. So 57% who said they'd vote for the coalition versus 43% who said they'd vote for Labour. Whereas only a month later, in the middle of July, the two parties were neck and neck after Kevin Rudd has replaced Julia Gillard. In another example, in this case in business, we see a quote here about China's growth, and we see that China's growth slowed to 7.5% in the second quarter of 2013 from 7.7% in January to March, in other words in the first quarter of 2013. What that means is that growth has slowed. They're still growing, but the growth has slowed by 0.2% over that period. In another business or economic example, in this case in relation to the Australian Stock Exchange, which is really a summary of the performance of companies and their share prices, we see as follows. At the close of business on Monday, the benchmark index was up 7.2 points, or 0.14%, at 4,981, whereas the broader All Ordinaries Index was up 8.1 points, or 0.16%, at 4,965. The idea here is that if we just look at large numbers like 4,981, etc., it's difficult to compare them. However, if we compare them in terms of percentages, it's easier to compare. So it's easier to compare 0.14% with 0.16%. In another example, in this case in a sporting context, if we look at the ladder after round 16 of the AFL, and if we just focus on the first two teams, we see that Hawthorn is ahead of Geelong. However, if you look at the details, they've both played 15, they've both won 13 matches and lost 2. And it's only when we look at the percentage column we realise why Hawthorn has been ranked above Geelong. In this case it's by percentage, which means the difference, if you take their number of points for divided by the number of points against and represent that ratio as a percentage, that's how we see they're differentiated. What I suggest now is, if you stop the video and spend some time looking at this table and see if you can find other teams that are separated only on percentage. Okay, did you notice then that Sydney and Fremantle are also on the same points but separated only by percentage? Did you see that the same is true for Carlton and West Coast, both on 28 points but separated by percentage? And then there are 3 teams all on the same points, the Kangaroos, Adelaide and Brisbane. There are of course many other examples where percentages are used in everyday life. So, in order to feel and work confidently with percentages, there are several things we need to do. Firstly, we need to appreciate the relationships and convert between fractions, decimals and percentages. We also need to know how to find percentages of an amount. For example, 25% of 200 is 50. We also need to understand how to increase or decrease values by different percentages. For example, we might realise that the price of a litre of petrol is increased by 10%. We'll also learn how to express one amount as a percentage of another. For example, if you scored 30 out of 50 on a test, that represents a result of 60%. Yes, we'll cover these topics in later videos. So in the meantime, please don't forget to complete your WSQ notes for this video, and we'll see you in class.